Welcome to the activation phase. I'm JP, and today I'm joined by Tim.
Hello.
All right, awesome. We are nearing the end of the Age of Vikings. So we are doing the Jomsvikings, a mysterious faction of Vikings, I guess. And they tend to be the natural progression from after people play Vikings, then they go to Jomsvikings because
Yeah.
the models are just a little bit similar. I
I mean,
guess as
yes, they
per
are
usual.
just they're just another Viking faction, right? No offense here. Just if you have good-looking Vikings and a bunch of Hearthguard and warriors, then go straight into Jomsvikings. Give them an extra shield, an extra axe, and you're done.
Yeah, definitely. Even if you're, I guess they're kind of like the transition from Vikings, pagan Rus. Like you'll normally go via the Yams Vikings.
Yeah.
They're kind of midway, but basically they are some semi-legendary Viking dudes who ended up on the Baltic Sea, basically kind of half mercenaries, half just pirates doing whatever they wanted to do, and they are kind of assumed to have a settlement now off the right at the mouth of the Oder River. You can go visit the settlement it's in Wolin, Poland right now, and there's actually a really nice reenactment or reconstruction settlement of like the I guess Jomsburg, and every summer they have a gigantic reenactment battle with like various Viking reenactors just beating each other half to death on the field outside the village. So it's actually really cool. You can I think I can't remember what it's called. Just YouTube Volin Viking Festival Jomsburg, something like that, and it'll come up, and it's pretty intense. So go
And
do
it seems
that
pretty
now.
authentic if they beat each other half to death, right? That's like it's like halfway there. Sounds sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like from what I understand, my limited knowledge of reenactment, you have like two different styles, like kind of like your Western European style where you try not to hurt each other too much, and then you have like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the Eastern style where that that really doesn't apply, and you really go for it, and you and you try and draw blood. So they're more of the latter style. So
I
um,
see.
yeah, it's pretty authentic. Also, it's a very nice summer holiday location. So if you're looking somewhere to go, it's quite a nice place.
Cool.
All right, now that we've covered both your holiday options and your miniature options, let's get to the saga content.
Yeah.
All right, what can you tell me about the Jomsvikings? Why are they so weird and so special?
All right, so they have they just they're just weird because they don't have levies. That's the first thing. Yeah, they have only Hearthguard heroes and warriors. And then of course they have this extra resource that's called Wrath tokens. And so half the battle board abilities, they are basically a way of saying you either let me do this. So let's go. Let's take a step back. So these abilities are split into two sides, right? One of them, half of the abilities can give you wrath, and the other half will take wrath to you need to spend it to make the ability work. And the abilities that give you wrath, it's not where you can just directly get wrath from them, but it says you can either activate this or your opponent can deny the activation and give you wrath instead. So he makes you mad by saying no, you don't get to do that. And so that's the whole idea. It's a kind of a management of battleboard resources and just yeah, it's I think it's a very interesting game inside of a game because this is just being able to do the wrath tokens right usually makes or breaks a Jomsviking game, and so this is a huge part of this, and it's definitely pretty weird.
Yeah. Also, good to mention that your wrath tokens kind of get carried from turn to turn, so it's not like you
Right.
lose them at the end of your turn. And there's also no limit to how many you can
Yes.
build up. So you can really choose when to when to use them for like one strike if you actually get them or not. But yes, it's kind of a weird mechanic. Probably I think the only one of its sort in Saga at the moment. Maybe Guerrilla Markers kind of like it, but nothing where you actually have you actually give your opponent like a choice of what they would rather have done to them, basically.
And the usual conversion rate with these abilities is one die for 2 wrath. So that's about how strong the wrath is supposed to be. And I think, as we see in the later abilities, that is actually how strong the wrath is.
So let's move on to the equipment options. It's a relatively simple one. You have a little bit more options than what you do with the Vikings themselves. But so for both your Warlord and your Hearthguard and your Warriors, you can either choose not to have any special equipment, or you can choose to have heavy weapons on either one of those one of those 3 options. So that's basically it. Nothing else. Either no equipment or heavy weapons. Nice and simple.
Sounds good. So, talking about nice and simple, are the basic abilities nice and simple, JP, or is there something different here?
Oh, they are a little bit different.
Hell yeah.
Obviously, they don't have any levy activation, basic activation thing.
Yeah.
So instead of your Hearthguard and your heroes are as usual, and instead of your levies, you have something called Appeal to the Gods using an uncommon. So this is an activation where you spend 1 to 3 Wrath tokens, and then for each token that you spent, you can take one of your available Saga dice and then roll it and place it on your battle board. So this is also in, I guess, in the activation phase as well. So pretty interesting. The combat bonus is also different. So again, as with all combat bonuses, you can place any of the dice facings. However, here you can either, if you play the combat bonus, you get 2 dice of your choice, so either attack or defense dice, or your opponent can choose to give you 1 Wrath token, basically. So it's down to your opponent, however. So that's the kind of the first time that the Wrath mechanic rears its head here. And then where normally the activation pool is located, you have something called Fury of the Pagans using an uncommon. This is again an activation ability, so activate up to 3 of your units. Each activation can be cancelled by your opponent if they give you 1 Wrath token. So quite a little bit different from the usual. But anyway, let's move on to the advanced abilities.
Right, let's get right into the first one, and it's a brutal one. It's called Punishment. It's an activation reaction that takes a rare. Trigger this ability after an activation ability has been triggered, but before it is resolved. The Saga ability is cancelled, or you gain 4 Wrath tokens. Your opponent chooses which. So as a Central European tournament player where the ages are mixed, and I play Hans a lot, this is my worst nightmare because this cancels the multi-activations and all the juicy multi-activations that you have on the battle boards, or basically any ability that says it's an activation can be cancelled by this, and there's definitely a bunch of very, very good ones. Even some ones that don't actually activate the unit to do anything special, but just takes away fatigue or whatever. And so yeah, this is brutal. And if you put that rare here, your high value activation one-off abilities on the other battle boards definitely suffer a lot.
I think this one also helps because since you don't have levies, you normally see Jomsviking warbands being smaller in terms of number of units than a lot of other warbands out there. And this helps you kind of even the playing field, since they can't out-activate you as easily and kind of run circles around you. So I think this one's pretty powerful. Also very annoying.
Yes.
All right. So the next one is a storm arises, and here you can use either uncommon or a rare. This is an activation ability, so remove a fatigue from one or two separate units, or gain 2 wrath tokens. Your opponent chooses which. So this is a very good way, especially if you combine it with Fury of the Pagans as well, to move up your warband quite quickly with the multiple activations, and then also play this to remove the fatigue. Since you're not resting, this is not something you have to do at the beginning. You can actually just do it during your activation phase itself after you've done something. So it's pretty powerful. And then also the wrath tokens themselves are always a nice little bonus, which you can use later on in the board for some other shenanigans. So overall, I think I've actually seen this one being played quite a lot, either kind of after
Yes, yeah.
a melee or something to charge again, or to prepare yourself for the next to be countercharged, something like that. So pretty powerful.
Yeah, it's really good. Also to keep your warlord safe, and just, I mean, there's no reason to put the rare here, but the uncommon, and I know the uncommon is really like really need a lot of uncommons to run this board probably. So it's always tough, but still, this ability gets played. All right, next one is Armor of the Pagans. It's melee or shooting reaction. It takes a common or an uncommon. Your opponent chooses whether your unit's armor is increased by 1 or you gain 2 wrath tokens. So yeah, this is um, the good old get more resilient or gain wrath. Yeah, I think this is especially good on Hearthguard, of course. I think we've talked about it a lot. The higher the armor, the better it is to increase it by 1. And so this is good, and the good thing is it takes a common, but I think it's less played than some of the other abilities on here.
Yeah, definitely. I think also if you decide to go the heavy weapon route, this is very useful as well, because all your warriors are just going to be armor 3 in melee, etc. So this gives them a little bit of a boost as well, just to be just that little bit more survivable.
Yeah.
So the next one is Holmgang. This is a melee ability, and using again either a common or an uncommon. So here, this is the first time you actually get to spend a wrath token. So here, spend 1 to 6 wrath tokens. For each token spent, gain 1 attack or 1 defense dice. For each die granted, your opponent must discard a die of the same type. This is yeah, pretty intense. I don't think I've ever had anyone play it with like 6 wrath tokens on me, but even yeah, like this is a surprisingly good way of both boosting your own aggressiveness and reducing your aggressiveness, sorry, of your opponent at the same time. Like it's just pretty gross in terms of being able to do a lot of damage and then be incredibly survivable, especially with your heavy weapon guys as well. So I think this one is very tasty, and it's kind of the first time also you see, like, you don't want to give your opponent that much wrath, because it gets yeah, it gets pretty nasty very quickly. And this one isn't even like the best use of wrath, as we'll see later on the board. So it's a good taste of what is to come here.
And I think this one's also the ability that usually just gets put on to just show your opponent you really don't want to be giving me wrath. Because in combination with other abilities on here that say basically you get attack dice, or you can gain wrath if your opponent decides so. Gaining these attack dice just seems, as the opposing player to the Jomsvikings, just seems less brutal, because they just gain attack dice. But here, if they spend a wrath for it, they gain attack dice and you lose them, so it's like double value. And so it's the mind game of, does it make sense to give them attack dice, and if just they have to spend another ability, but they will have this melee will be more powerful. It's just ugh, it's a tough fight in your own head.
I think also here the defense dice part, you just need to be aware that um, you actually have to have like bonus defense dice or something available at that time to be able to
That's
remove
right,
them
yeah.
as well. So for if you're playing the Scots or something, that's not going to be an issue if they're playing their combo. But yeah, a lot of times like you don't tend to get gigantic amounts of bonus defense dice to begin with. So I think most of the time I've seen people just removing or gaining attack dice from this, and then removing attack dice from your opponent, rather than the defense kind of like the more defense route.
Right. Yeah. Let's go into the next one. It's called Nordic Tempest. It's an activation ability that can take any die facing. It says resolve a shooting attack against an enemy unit with 3 bonus attack dice, or gain 2 wrath tokens. Your opponent chooses which. No Saga ability can be triggered during resolution of this shooting attack. This, again, there's no reason to put the rare here. This ability, and I'm sorry for cursing, is so ass. I hate it so much. It's so fucking good. But as the opposing player, it's ass, of course, I should say. This is just it. This messes with army construction a lot, because I think some players, me included, tend to put like little 6 packs of levies or 4 packs of warriors down, to make sure their big units are supported by more Saga dice. And so this just puts a big fuck you on that, because giving your opponent Wrath just hurts so much, but losing a Saga die, or potentially losing a Saga die because you can't play defense dice, just also hurts a lot. And then, of course, this is the age of Vikings, and so there's a bunch of factions or a few factions, I should say, with Hearthguard on
Yeah,
horses,
mounted Hearthguard. This sucks so
which
much.
hate this. They hate this ability, and then the same is true, of course, for when you combine this with Crusades or Invasions. There's a lot more mounted Hearthguard, and this is I think you play this every turn, and it's brutal every turn.
Yeah, I think I've never not had this played on me every turn.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it's just so incredibly good. You can like there's no range whatsoever. It's just anywhere on the board. You can just decide to delete kind of like the 2 or 3 guys hiding in a corner,
yeah,
or kind of go like the 4 or 5 warriors with like 3 fatigues, and you can't be bothered to charge them. But this is like the perfect thing just to knock down a Saga dice. But yes, this is brutal.
yeah. I mean, it seems pretty small, right? Three attack dice seems like, ugh, yeah, that's okay. But like, pff, yeah,
Yeah, but
and
it's
of
you
course,
normally chip. Yeah, you normally chip away like one, like a mounted Hearthguard or something like that, and this is a pretty good trade if you're putting down a common. Um,
yeah,
like
and you're not risking
like that.
anything of your own. You're not even risking a fatigue. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think they should ban this, but that's fine. But yeah, this is basically like 1 dice goes on here for your Jomsvikings. So
Absolutely, yeah.
anyway, once we've gone, this is kind of like the pinnacle, I feel, of the Jomsvikings board and their signature move.
They hate it a lot.
But
Yeah, go ahead, please, please. Let's keep going. I want to be gone. No, not
yeah.
gone, but I want to keep on going.
All right. So the next one is also using any of the 3 dice facings. So this is called Pagan Faith. This is a melee or shooting reaction. So gain 3 attack or defense dice, or gain 2 wrath tokens. Your opponent chooses which. And this one, if you use a rare, you can resolve it a second time. So
Oof,
pretty
oof,
intense.
oof.
So I actually think this is the only one where you actually get a bonus for your rares on this board. So that's a
Yeah,
interesting tidbit. But yeah, I think this one's like even the common, putting common down on this is really good. Just the defense dice as well. It combines well with the heavy weapon guys, just to make them so survivable. And putting down a rare and getting potentially either 6 attack or 6 defense dice is insane. I must admit, I have traded like the 2 wrath tokens for this ones, especially if you're trying to delete a unit or something and they're just loading up with a rare like 2 times. I have fallen to like the temptation of just being like, no, you're not doing it this time. Take the wrath, and then you regret it. But anyway, it's a good one. I think this one's probably after Nordic Tempest. I probably see this one also quite often being put down.
Yeah, of course. This is I think this is the go-to. Taking any Saga die just makes it playable every turn, and then this is just a good trade. Like the rare on here is just really, really, really good because a rare for 6 attack dice I think is quite rare. That's like Goth or Hun levels of powerful. Especially it's definitely a lot better than the other Viking factions can have. And so yeah, man, it's just this ability this is the workhorse I think of generating wrath tokens because as you said, the temptation to just go, fuck you, you're not taking 6 attack dice again, is just pretty high.
Yeah, and then you obviously regret it later on as the opponent of the Jomsvikings, but we'll get to that.
All right, let's go to the next one. It's called Jomsborg with an O, but I guess that's okay because they're Vikings. Anyway, it takes an uncommon or a rare, and it's a melee ability that says spend 1 to 6 wrath tokens. For each token spent, you may reroll 2 dice during this melee. Each reroll allows you to reroll 1 attack or 1 defense die. I think this is the ability I've seen played the least because the other Wrath token abilities, like I think people realize that giving you the Jomsviking player Wrath is pretty dangerous, and so it doesn't happen a lot here in our community. And when it happens, it's usually not for Jomsborg. I I I guess it's a good reroll, but I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think I've actually seen this one played very often. I can't remember the last time it was played against me. If you get your Wrath tokens as the Jomsviking, you normally put it on one of the other ones which are coming up on the right-hand side of the board. So maybe I should move on to the next one. So this
Yes,
one
please.
is using just a rare. It's called Hammer of Thor, which is a melee ability. So this is for heroes only. So you spend 1 to 4 Wrath tokens. For each token spent, inflict an extra hit on the enemy unit, or cancel a casualty suffered by your unit. All tokens must be spent on the same effect. I think I've seen this one actually not that often. I think the combination of having to put a rare on it and then also having Wrath tokens at the same time makes it a little bit difficult to pull off. I do actually think I may have had Timo play against me with his Warlord on my Warlord with some automatic hits. So I think that's probably been like an auto delete of my Warlord. But again, not like I haven't seen it very often, I must admit.
Yeah, I agree. I think the rare is usually spent elsewhere, and then the Wrath tokens are usually spent elsewhere as well, and also only for the hero. Yeah, I'll just go right into the next one, and it's an FAQ'd one, and it's definitely a powerhouse, and it makes the Jomsviking player and the opponent and the miniatures sing. So it's called Song of Steel, and takes a common for an activation ability. It says spend 1 to 6 Wrath tokens. Activate that many friendly units to move. They count as armed with javelins until the end of the turn. These activations do not generate fatigue. It's just, man, at the top right it says Fury of the Pagans, activate up to 3 of your units. Each activation can be cancelled by your opponent if they give you Wrath. And then this is usually in the same, like, opponents usually put this down here together with Song of Steel, or down together with Song of Steel, because yes, you can cancel it, and yes, that's fine, but then their activation will be without fatigue, and they can throw the javelins at you. And this no fatigue move through this is so powerful for the Jomsvikings, because that just, in combination with a Storm Rises that can remove fatigue, and the top right Fury of the Pagans is just, it just makes sure that these guys will move a lot without having a ton of fatigue on them, and it's super powerful. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if you're also if you're playing against the Jomsviking with a mounted faction, this makes them really unpredictable. As soon as you give them a token, they can basically just
Mm-hmm.
run up within medium, start javelining your mounted warlord or your mounted warriors or something to death really quickly. Um, and it, yeah, basically they don't get fatigued, so they don't mind extending themselves either. So all in all, pretty nasty. Also, they I guess the downs or kind of depends on how you see it, but like the downside or the upside, depending on how you play it, is that they do have the javelins until the end of their turn. But yeah, I think maybe only with like Normans or something like that, where you can. Do you countercharge in with the Normans? I'm trying to remember what activation reactions they have.
I, th-
Um,
I think they do have one, but I'm not super sure, but I think they have one. But I would
Yeah,
have to look at the
or they
code.
can run away, but like maybe I'm confusing it with like the Polish where you can actually countercharge. But um, I think that's maybe like the only downside where you can actually see. Oh, sorry, the Welsh, because you can countercharge them and then
Yeah,
they
the
don't
Welsh
get
definitely
their.
can. Yeah. The Welsh
Yeah,
can.
the Welsh can, so I'm probably thinking about them. So that's a good counter because then they have the like none of the benefits of the javelins and only the downsides.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Um,
The Normans can't. The Normans. You're right. It's only the Welsh.
yeah, so with that small exception, this ability is just so good,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and I think it's probably the first one that gets like you said, there's always a dice on here, and as soon as they get a wrath token, like yeah, this like you just hear like the motor starting up and be like, okay, it's Song of Steel time. Things are gonna
Yeah.
happen. It's gonna be a bad
Yeah.
time, and then yeah, and then after like the turn where the Song of Steel gets played, normally you're like, oh, I suddenly I'm missing half my warband, or why are all my mounted guys dead right now? Stuff like that. So definitely a very powerful ability and a very good reason not to give them wrath.
I agree, absolutely. All right, let's go into the last ability. I think it's yours.
Yep, yeah, it's my turn. So this is the only 2 dice ability. So this requires a uncommon plus a rare called Legends. This is a orders ability. So spend 6 wrath tokens. Until the start of your next turn, all your units have armor of 6 against melee and shooting attacks, and your opponent cannot choose to make you gain wrath tokens. I must admit, I don't think I've ever seen this played. So it sounds very nice, but first you need 6 wrath tokens. Secondly, you need to play 2 dice. Like the effect itself does seem pretty nasty, but like once you've actually played this effect, and yeah, like you don't actually have that many dice left to play to enjoy them. Yeah, the rest of the abilities actually. So I'm not sure. It sounds very
Yeah,
nice, but I think in practice it's very limited. And I must admit, I don't think I've seen it played against me at any point.
I've seen it played once, and that was in a kind of a stalemate game where it was like Fight of the Warlords or whatever, and it was just like, yeah, you can charge me, but I have like nothing's gonna happen, and so yeah, this definitely is, I think, possibly the worst ability on here. Just six
Which
wrath
is
is
which is
incredible.
strange, right? Because
Yeah,
like you'd say, like if you're getting 6 armor on your warriors or something, that's pretty amazing. But yeah, I don't know why it's so difficult to play. I guess the combination of both, like having to have the wrath and then also having to play this plus everything else, makes it a little bit difficult.
And I mean, it's an uncommon, which is super super good on this board, like for the basic abilities and for the abilities down here, because it usually substitutes for a rare, which is incredible. And then it also takes a rare, which is insane on this board for Pagan Faith or Punishment. So, and then six wrath tokens spent on Song of Steel is just also a ton more value. So it Legends just isn't good
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, I guess so too. And I guess if you are going to see this, it's going to be in the last two turns, basically. And then probably a combination of Legends and then Fury of the Pagans just to move everyone and charge them as much as possible to get like an effect out of the armor 6.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah,
Starting on or finishing off on a little bit of a downer on this board, but the rest of the board, I think we would rate it pretty highly.
yeah. Of course,
And
it's incredible.
yeah, personally as well, I don't think I've ever had an easy game against Jomsvikings. It's always
They don't exist, man.
yeah, it's always a difficult game. You always have to be on your toes. You always have to make decisions even in your opponent's turn, stuff like that. So I think it's a very interesting board. It keeps you also engaged in the game because you constantly have to weigh up if you're going to allow the Jomsviking player to use the full ability um, or give them Wrath. I think normally I try not to give them Wrath until maybe the last turn where they either haven't put things on the board and they can't use like the Wrath, or it will be very limited. But normally every time you give them Wrath early on the game, you regret it later. So
Yes, yeah, for
it's,
sure.
it's unfortunately that's the case, and I guess unfortunately as well, it means that sometimes a Jomsviking player just won't be able to use a number of these abilities that need Wrath.
I mean, yeah, they by putting down one die onto Peel to the Gods to be able to roll more Saga dice, or one die onto Song of Steel or Holmgang, that's usually enough to use your other seven dice to play them with the abilities that you can actually play. Because having that die on there is usually like enough of a threat to say, okay, I don't want to give you Wrath. So, JP, how do you like? I know you've just went into it a little bit, but what's your strategy to actually beating them? Like, do you just yeah? How do you beat the Jomsvikings?
I think well, number one, they have relatively small units a lot of times. I don't think I've seen like a unit of 12 warriors running around very often with them because you just
Mm-hmm.
don't have enough dice otherwise. I think it
Mm-hmm.
would be quite powerful to try it out. Um, but I guess the easy way of saying it is you just, depending on your warband as well, because if you have a melee focused warband, you're going to have a bad time. You need to engage them, and if you're not wanting to give them Wrath, they're just gonna they can just use the full kind of like their full abilities, do a lot of damage. It's going to be a bad time, and normally they can line up a few things, and like the trade won't be good for you. In terms of if you have more of a shooty warband, like the Welsh, mounted Welsh or Huns or something like that, you can definitely just pepper them to death. Try not to get into combat range with them, which is a little bit hard, especially with the multiple activations and the and removing their fatigue. So that's tough. But and you just constantly, there's nowhere to hide from them either. They don't have any
Yeah,
shooting, but they have Nordic Tempest, which is pretty much equivalent to, or even better than having like a unit of levy shooting at you, basically. So
I agree. Yeah,
um, so it's never going to be easy. So focus on the scenario itself. Try not to get engaged and try not to get their try not to give them too much wrath. Is basically the best I can do on giving you advice on how to beat them.
yeah. I mean that's fair though, right? It, there's usually a point in the game where you need to decide, okay, is this the fight that makes me lose this game? And that's the fight where you really need to just just decide, okay, I'm giving them all the wrath, like 10 wrath now, and there's one turn to come, and I think I can weather it, or like I need to win this without giving them wrath because there's enough on their board still, so they could use that wrath to absolutely whoop my ass. And I think that to beat the Jomsvikings, you kind of have to have a good understanding of the scenario and of the strength of the board state and everything. I think these guys are a deceptively strong warband. Like they look like there's just a bunch of abilities that you can always cancel and it's fun. It's gonna be fine, but that's just not the case. And so they are the best advice to I think to if you want a blanket advice for everything, it's just don't ever give them wrath, and unless they have no way to use it throughout the game. And so yeah, and that's pretty shit advice because it doesn't actually work in every scenario. But man, these guys are tough to beat.
Yeah, definitely. I think also the like I think they were very popular to begin with, and now they slightly like there's always one or two Jomsvikings players, but given their strength, I'm always surprised how few there are in terms of just raw numbers of Jomsviking players. But anyway,
I think
should we?
their draw is a little bit their draw has suffered a little bit by this because when there's already like 4 or 5 uh, strong and I think well represented players like they that are active in the community, the draw to also do Jomsvikings is kind of low. It may be the same as with Huns or Goths or whatever. I feel like for the World Cup there were not that many Huns, considering it's the warbands talked about so much, and so I think that's kind of that suffers that these warbands suffer in actual player numbers because people are like, nah, I don't want to do them if everybody else is doing them.
Right. I think the Space Marines would disagree with you on that one.
That's just different, man. It's so easy to get into Space Marines because every battle box gives you like 15 million Space Marines for 2.5 euros.
All right,
So that's different. All right, let's get into modeling options, right?
let's do it. I think the aesthetics of the Jomsvikings are somewhere. If you're following the Saga aesthetics anyway, it's somewhere halfway between um, pagan Rus and Vikings a little bit.
Yeah.
So I have seen a very wide range of different warbands. So going from the Gripping Beast Dark Age Warrior route, from like it's just warriors with spears and axes and kind of like your very standard looking guys, to what Gripping Beast has, which are just really nice looking models. And I think it's actually sculpted by the same guy who did a lot of the footsore models, so those are very compatible as well. At the moment, I think Victrix is coming out with a Pagan Rust plastic box as well, so that should be like a really good one to mix in with the rest of them as well, and kind of make a
Absolutely,
pagan,
yeah.
pagan, or sorry, a Jomsviking warband. So I think a lot of options, just using standard Viking models with some heavy weapons as well, is completely valid. So lots of different options, pretty much perfect portability between Vikings and Jomsvikings if you want to go down that route.
Yeah. Man, it's just a very easy to build, very strong warband. Like that's the that's kind of rare I think where just the basic models in a warband make it's just so good that it's perfectly fine to just grab a box of Victrix Vikings and go for it, yeah. And I
Yeah,
think there's
definitely.
also a bunch of insanely detailed metal models for them, right?
Yeah, Gripping Beast has really nice ones. Sure, there's like everyone has like a Viking range, so it really depends on what you want
Yeah,
to
fair enough.
what you want to do. I mean, like it seems like every single miniature manufacturer has a Viking range of some sort. So go nuts.
Right.
Um, whichever
Enjoy.
aesthetic you want, you can go for it. So no issues
Yeah.
there. How would you build a warband though?
I think the basic 3 points of Warriors, 3 points of Hearthguard works really well with these guys. Um, that's definitely what I've seen a lot. Like For the warriors, like 10, 8, 6, and then for the Hearthguard, 6 and 6, or just 1.5 points of Hearthguard and the rest put into one, or maybe 6 and 6 for the warriors again, something like that. I think that's just it's really not that big of a deal with these guys because everything's so good and the equipment options are determined in the game when you need it to be, when you need them to be. And yeah, that's I think that's usually what you see. And I think you don't there's very rarely a heavy weapon in the warbands I see, and if there is, it's usually on like a 6 or 8 man unit of warriors and never on Hearthguard, which makes sense. This might be a hot take for many people, but I think heavy weapon Hearthguard are probably the worst combination of of unit type with equipment.
Take now. Yeah, I think with Song of Steel as well, you can get a lot of the benefits of javelins, or sorry, of heavy weapons, when you need them.
Yeah,
So I think there it gives you the flexibility, and you don't need to commit to having them the entire game. So yeah, I think they look very cool, but they're not necessary. I think as
Yeah.
well, like the 3 points of Hearthguard, 3 points of Warriors, you're gonna go. Yeah, it's not going to be down to the unit composition as much as just being able to know the board and be able to put your opponent into like some bad trades, basically.
I agree. I agree. It's very different to other warbands where like the unit composition makes such a big difference. This is just honestly put anything down. It's gonna be how you position them and play with them and how well you can use wrath tokens as a threat to say to your opponent, don't ever give me wrath.
Yep. All right. So I think overall, like the models themselves and the equipment options give you like are a very interesting way of getting started with Saga for like a new person, since you don't need to worry about levy and you don't even need to worry about equipment options.
Yeah,
But in terms of the board itself and being able to play it well, I think it's actually a pretty tough one to master.
I absolutely agree. I honestly I'm scared to play these guys, right? We're appreciating them right here, but I don't want to play them because I feel like it's gonna be I like mind fucky warbands, but this is just I don't know, not for me.
It's too much. All right.
Yeah. Stop. I don't want to think. Yeah.
All
So,
right. Let's
what's your
maybe give them. Yeah, I was gonna ask you because I was trying to think about like a scale. So I think they kind of have like the baggy trousers. So I'm gonna give them a 4 out of 5 baggy trousers. My reasoning here is modeling options really good. You can go nuts on them because essentially they're just like pirates, and they'll have various equipment options, and they can have like really gaudy uniforms. So there's no reason you can't just go absolutely nuts on painting them with like the most outlandish patterns and colors. And also you don't have any levies to worry about, so it's going to be a relatively small warband. And then the playstyle itself, I think it can be a little bit maybe disheartening as a Jomsviking player when you can't like. So there's just going to be a number of games where you're never going to get wrath, and then you just can't use like a number of the the abilities, which kind
yeah.
of defeats the purpose of having a battle board. So I think that is maybe the only downside to this warband. But playing against them is always like very taxing because you're constantly making decisions also in your opponent's turn. But it's normally a lot of fun, and it gives you also a little bit of control over your kind of like your destiny. Like you have a quick win where you cancel an ability, but it means you get absolutely crushed later on in the game when they get their wrath tokens. So it's like if you get crushed, it's kind of down to yourself as well. So it's
Yeah.
always fun warband to play against. So
I agree. Yeah, I
overall,
absolutely agree.
yeah, overall very fun. So no, it's powerful, but it's not. It doesn't feel like it's like crushingly powerful.
I think I'll give them 4.2 because they're one of the few factions that kind of can't really stop them being one of the few foot factions or infantry factions where you can't really stop them from being fast anyway. And they are so good at objective-based games where it's about getting objectives and moving them back. And they are so good at objectives, at scenarios where you just need to fight your opponent. And that's just, that combination, I think, is kind of rare and incredibly brutal. And so 4.2, and of course, Simon, the Grand Melee Germany winner from last year, played the, or from 2 years prior? No, I think it was last year. Played the Jomsvikings and to perfection, of course. And so they are definitely very good. 4.2 baggy trousers out of 5 heavy weapons.
All right, awesome. I guess that completes our Jomsviking review. So thank you very much for listening, and to the next time.
See you next time. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.